The city of Buffalo is a very proud town. We've come from a Rust Belt past and emerged as a growing tech hub and thriving biomedical corridor. On the one hand, we're in the midst of a long-awaited renaissance, and our city has some of the largest, longest-running, and well-attended Juneteenth and similar cultural celebrations in the entire United States. On the other hand, a section of Buffalo has an entrenched poverty issue, the East Side, and which is predominantly Black and African American. East Buffalo is where a heated debate is now raging over the imposition and injustice of a so-called cap and stitch transportation proposal. It's concerning a state DOT project, the New York Route 33 Kensington Expressway, the 1950s era highway at the center of a massive $1 billion preservation initiative, supposedly concerned with reconnecting communities. What the Kensington Project will preserve is an antiquated, unwanted, unwelcome federal aid highway at all costs. The Kensington was and is an infrastructural barrier at least 20 years past the end of its project life cycle. Its overhead walk bridges were only supposed to last 40 years. The present-day Kensington Project is steeped in controversy over a perceived lack of community engagement tied to reality that, much like its forerunner from the 1950s, today's project was announced in conjunction with a dictated agenda, the cap and stitch. This proposed outcome is overwhelmingly opposed by a significant percentage of Buffalo's East Side neighbors. We prefer Humboldt Parkway's tree-lined canopy restored and its neighborhoods reconnected together again. We desire the Parkway's and MLK Park's connectivity to Delaware Park repaired. We wish the Kensington Expressway removed. We'd like it remediated. There is much room for justice to be enacted here. Such demands reflect a holistic community redevelopment and environmental justice approach, unlike New York State DOT's. Our community also deserves a comprehensive environmental impact statement and a beneficial community benefit agreement. We are meeting and hearing from a number of our impacted East Side community neighbors in hope amplification of our stories, as told in our own words, will furnish a supportive documentation of the Kensington Project's underexplored effects, and so too, East Side residents' long-term and underreported trauma may finally be acknowledged.
My name is REMEDIATED. For 25 years I lived on Humboldt Parkway.
Tammy used to live in the Humboldt Parkway neighborhood. When you were living there and having all of these negative impacts from that highway, including your family's peace of mind. I mean, we take it for granted that you have peace of mind in your home, but when you live near a highway, not that anybody asked for it to be there, because they didn't, the residents of Humboldt Parkway neighborhood did not ask the government to put the Kensington Expressway there. They were dictated to and told, this is what's going to happen in this neighborhood. And for many of those residents, that happened after they had purchased their homes and they did not know the highway was going to be constructed. So imagine your peace being disrupted that monumentally, and you're not knowing that it was going to happen, but not wanting to sell your home because, like you said, and it's so just dreadfully unfair that that highway was put there, predominantly because the neighborhood was changing, as it was all across the country during that time, because of the great migration that happened during the 40s and into the 50s and into the 70s, to be really honest, and because of white flight. The neighborhoods were becoming increasingly brown, increasingly Black, and they had a path of least resistance to getting those highways placed where they wanted them to be, because nobody was defending or standing up for the rights of Black and brown residents at that time. And your family is of mixed heritage. I know you said your grandmother was German.
Yes.
And your grandmother was German, so you have a German ancestry.
Yes.
But I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this story, and you know what? This is not a Black and white issue or a white issue. This is a green issue. This is a justice issue. When you were growing up, what happened happened when you were going to high school that a teacher taught you about the Kensington?
We had a social studies class, and we were learning about the history of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
That's the high school that I was able to get into. They sit right on a parkway, the Bidwell Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the jarring moment when she said, imagine a highway being there instead of what this beautiful green space. And then she turned the page, she started to talk about the street that I lived on, and seeing those old historic photos. It was very just, it really just bums you out to think like, man.
How did you hear about the Kensington Expressway growing up in terms of friends and family? What did friends and family say about the highway when you were growing up?
So by the time my aunts and my grandmother had come to Buffalo, the Kensington Expressway was already in existence, already had replaced the Parkway. But my uncle, Terrence Robinson, he would reminisce about playing football on the Parkway as a boy, and talk about the history, how people would be able to take their carriages.
Oh my goodness.
Or their horseback riding up and down from one park to the other. Could you
horseback
imagine?
riding up and down Humboldt Parkway.
Yeah, when he would tell me about the historical
fantastic.
use of those parkways. So
it was like Central Park, like a Central City Park.
And it's the only one that connects two parks directly as well. And
those parks are
Delaware Park and Martin Luther King Park, previously Humboldt Park, before it was renamed. So,
and what did your family say about, or Mr. Robinson and other family members? What did they express about the highway? Like when your grandmother purchased her home, did she have an opinion about the highway?
Yeah. So my grandmother had two daughters, and two of her daughters decided they were going to live in Buffalo, and so she helped them purchase two houses on the Humboldt Parkway, which that we still own.
Wonderful.
And she saw it. They were extremely affordable. Again, devaluing a real estate.
Isn't that something? They were affordable because of the highway.
Yes. So it was an opportunity, and she believed that one day they would restore the Parkway.
She did.
And that the homes would continue. It would grow for her kids as an asset.
Generational wealth.
Yeah.
Yes.
A little.
She thought about that.
Yeah. And I believe
Smart.
my mom's house was once. I believe it was owned last by like an eye doctor.
Oh, okay.
And then his family ended up either selling the property or losing it. My mom bought it. It was a fire damaged property. And then my aunt, it was a black family that had owned it prior to them. So, and both my mom and my aunt are in interracial, relationships. So, we definitely fit right into the neighborhood. But
so you understand both advantages of this debate. You understand the mainstream advantage of not being necessarily historically, economically disadvantaged, but you also understand it. You see it from the vantage of your family members that are Black and African American, and you understand. You've got like the best of both worlds because you got a bird's eye view of this debate.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think of the New York State Department of Transportation's approach this time? I know we weren't here, neither of us was here back during the 1950s when the highway was first being proposed.
Yeah.
What do you think about the way that New York State Department of Transportation brought the news or the possibility of a Kensington Expressway project to the community's focus? Are you a fan of their approach?
No, I believe they could have taken a much more of a grassroots approach to alerting the community that, hey, we got money coming down the pipeline to do a project. We need your input, because the input period, I think back in 2022, 2021, there wasn't a big turnout. People, if you didn't know somebody who told you what was going on, You didn't know what was going on. I still have people that I know that they live or their parents still live on the Parkway, and they don't know what's going on. And this issue is getting a lot of good news coverage, but you know, it's they didn't make a real effort to reach the people in those communities.
I wonder if they understood, or maybe they did, I don't know. I wonder if they understood the dynamics of community communications and conversations and dialogues. There is a disconnect in
Absolutely.
every city between persons that are tuned in and have their finger on the pulse of every issue, especially if it's broadcast at all on the news. But then you've got other folks that are so busy just trying to make it, just trying to live, trying to keep their head above water,
Exactly.
that feel disenfranchised, feel like, well, my vote doesn't count, so it doesn't matter what my opinion is about this public policy issue or what have you. But you're not the first person that said the outreach left a lot to be desired. The public comment period was not publicized broadly, widely enough. It also was too short a time frame, and the fact of the New York State Department of Transportation, it almost seems as if they approached Buffalo with a project already in mind,
Yes.
as opposed to coming to Buffalo saying, we have a budget, we can do a project, what would you folks like to have done? Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. Just a perfect summary of what we got, of the cards we were dealt, you know, and even in the last meeting they had at Northland, the two options that they boiled it down to, it was essentially the project we're now being stuck with, but removal was the other one, and it's just like, why didn't we model out removal and allow two different things to be commented on, if that's what you were able to survey at your meeting to get the community input, to then go back to the drawing board and create this proposal, and now this project that they're really pushing forward with. So
You're absolutely right. I've asked that question of New York State Department of Transportation. I've asked a May 27, 2021 article called Can Removing Highways Fix America's Cities? Appeared in the New York Times newspaper. In that article, Buffalo's Kensington Expressway was listed under the category and heading under official removal study. My question is, why were we in Buffalo not told that an official study considering removal had been done, and where's the proposal?
yeah,
Where is
what
it?
are the results from that
What
study?
what are the results from the study? Exactly. Who took removal of the Kensington Expressway off the community's table? Because at one point, it almost seemed as if New York State Department of Transportation was suggesting that there was a couple or several, a number of community groups from East Buffalo that had advocated for the cap and stitch, or in other words, the concrete deck and virtual park. It seemed as if they were hinting or saying that this project for the cap and stitch approach comes from the community, when that doesn't seem to be absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Let's talk about people. In your family, was the highway responsible for damage to health of persons?
So, like I said, I came to Buffalo when I was an infant. I believe I was under 6 months. So I really grew up in front of the highway into, being a young adulthood. But before that, my mom lived near the Bronx River Parkway, and which is a very similar story to the Kensington. And so I have two older siblings. My sister, that's the middle child, she has very severe asthma, and she's had it since she was little. I developed asthma. I grew into asthma, which isn't normal, but it's also what happens, how chronic disease can develop from chronic exposure.
Exactly.
And you know, my kids spend about a quarter of their time at grandma's house, and 2 out of my 3 children are severely asthmatic.
My goodness,
and,
my word.
and my son deals with chronic bronchitis, so it's just.
How old is he?
He is 8.
How long has he had bronchitis?
Chronic bronchitis, he gets it at least once, 2 times a year.
And how young was he when he was diagnosed with that?
He was a toddler.
My goodness.
Yeah. So,
and you were living on Humboldt Parkway at that time, or was he visiting a lot?
So he was visiting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We moved from Humboldt Parkway when he was an infant.
Mm-hmm. Any smokers in your family?
No smokers.
My goodness.
Yeah, no smokers.
And he had chronic bronchitis, and he's 8 now.
Yeah.
Anybody else in your sister, yourself, your sons, anyone else in your family suffer from any respiratory ailments or cancers?
I mean, my mom, she's not diagnosed with anything, but if you have to hack for the first 30 minutes of your day, like, I don't think that's a good way to wake up.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Hacking and coughing all morning.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I also deal. I'm on the verge of heart disease. I have a low blood pulse, low heartbeat per minute. My beats per minute is very low, which is indicator of like atrophy of the heart.
Bless your heart. Indeed.
Literally.
Yeah.
I have bad circulation because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I have vein issues, which is a mix of hereditary as well, but it's related to the heart function.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I'm sure if I kept seeing the doctors, if it wasn't so expensive to, I'd be able to find some more stuff. But, you know, I'm just trying to be a mom and work and live and, you know, stand up for the work that needs to be done.
And you're not happy with this Kensington Expressway
Absolutely
proposal?
not. I've been waiting my whole life to see that parkway restored.
I wonder if Humboldt Parkway neighborhood were not a predominantly Black and African American neighborhood and community, inside a predominantly Black and African American East Buffalo and East Side community, if the state came up with $1 billion from the federal government or from its own coffers and was able to do something about this highway that has made people sick for multiple generations, that ruined the environment for the past almost 100 years, that is an eyesore, and that is at the end of its life cycle. I mean, the next time anyone drives by the Kensington Expressway, take a good hard look at that expressway. And if you think the current debate, and it seems like there's 2 sides debating about this issue, and you think that that's something, consider this. We as a community have been complacent about the Kensington Expressway. Take a good hard look at that expressway. Look at the rust that you see all over the place. Look at the mold that you see all over the place. Look at the crumbling concrete that you see all over the place. How come we as a community were not loudly complaining about the condition of the Kensington Expressway all these years? The overhead walk bridges on the Kensington Expressway were only supposed to last about 40 years. That means that highway, 40 years from 1958, 1971, is what, 1990, 2011? Since 2011, we should have been complaining as a community about the condition of the Kensington Expressway. Engineers in our community should have been ringing the alarm, this quote a song title, should have been ringing the alarm about the condition of civil engineers. They know what to look for. They saw, didn't they see the crumbling concrete, the antiquated overhead walkway systems? Didn't they see the mold? Didn't they see the rust? But here we are. We are where we are. And the bottom line is that the highway getting placed in the middle of a highly densely populated residential neighborhood that white people were fleeing from in droves because they knew two things for absolutely certain. The neighborhood was becoming increasingly, the radio streets, increasingly black and African American. At the same time, they knew a highway was going to be coming, and they exited, stayed left, and got the heck out of Dodge. And Dodge Street is not far from Humboldt Parkway. Matter of fact, it is right there at the intersect there, right next to Northampton Street. They got out of town, literally, and hightailed it to the suburbs, and they left in the wake, they left in the shadow, the black and African American community inheriting this monstrous behemoth highway that was deposited like itself all across urban America, in a lot of urban metropolitan areas, municipalities, the cities. You'll find a highway in the middle of a highly densely populated residential area. But guess what? Since 1990s, those highways have been being removed.
Yep.
And Buffalo, we like to say we're like 30 years behind the rest of the country. Buffalo, when a chance came where different groups have been advocating, and different individuals and activists have been advocating for that highway to be removed, something can finally be done.
Yeah.
$1 billion budget has arrived.
We don't even need half of that
And
to do it.
How much would it cost to? That's
fill it in
that's how
and
you know.
restore it?
That's how you know it would be cheaper.
Yeah.
Because the New York State Department of Transportation won't just tell us the quote. They won't just simply say, well, it's cost about anywhere from $100 to $300 million to remove the highway in other locations. It would cost concrete amount, this figure here in Buffalo. The fact that they won't give us that quote, but are just telling us things like, spoon feeding us things like, well, it's not feasible.
Yeah.
How do we know it's not feasible if you won't tell us why, in what way it's not feasible? The fact that so few public elected officials stood up for East Buffalo and for the east side of Buffalo's Humboldt Parkway neighborhood residents is very, very telling, because in the Skagwada corridor, up where the 198 is, residents that live closer to North Buffalo, and that's like also includes the west side of Buffalo, they are going to get their needs met. Yeah. Those folks are going to have the highway removed, and Delaware Park is the parkway is going to have a boulevard that looks like it's flowing through a park. It's not going to be an expressway anymore. But you know why that happened? Because their New York State Assemblyman, Sean Ryan, and the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council, which is the premier metropolitan planning organization and transportation organization, not NFTA. See, in East Buffalo, we think the NFTA is the premier regional transportation planning entity in this Buffalo Niagara region. That's not so. Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council is. And that organization and Assemblyman Sean Ryan helped bring a 20-year process, just like East Buffalo. It's been 20 years almost people have been advocating, actually has been 20 years people have been advocating for that highway's removal. Well, up there in North Buffalo and on the west side, that Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council and Assemblyman Sean Ryan got together, put their heads together, and those residents are going to get what they need. So we need that to happen in the Kensington corridor. We need our assembly persons and senators, including Senator the Honorable Kirsten Gillibrand and the Honorable Charles Schumer, and the Honorable Congressman Higgins. We need them to step up to the plate, all of them, and to see not the light of day, but see the light of justice, and see how important it is that justice happen, and that this highway, which all of us acknowledge is a problem, was designed to cause a problem, was known would be a problem. Now we have the budget, $1 billion, we can do something about it. We have enough money, that $1 billion probably could remove that highway and connect every single Humboldt Parkway neighborhood from Delaware Park in North Buffalo all the way down to downtown Buffalo. But what also killed downtown Buffalo was the Kensington Route 33
Yes.
Expressway. Highways that are put in residential neighborhoods do tremendous damage. They damage the neighborhoods where the residential neighborhoods where they're placed. They damage the commercial corridors that are nearby those residential neighborhoods. Look at Jefferson Avenue. Look at Fillmore Avenue. Look at East Ferry Street and wonder, you don't have to. What happened to those streets, those corridors? Not just White Flight, but the Kensington Expressway. They went hand in hand. White Flight, 1950s era federal aid highway, plopped in the middle of a highly densely populated urban residential community. And if I could ask you, Emmy, your grandmother, who made a monumental investment in the Humboldt Parkway neighborhood, you mentioned to me that up to the end of her life, and she died, rest her soul, she died not too long ago.
Yeah, November 4th of last fall.
She passed away. I think at the time she passed away, there were press conferences going on
Yes.
about this project. Did your grandmother have an opinion about the expressway around that time frame?
Yeah,
Before she passed away?
was appalled. My aunt, who was in the process of retiring from the DEC, she knew that she was working hard to evaluate their data on air quality.
And that's the Department of Environmental Conservation. You have an aunt who works there.
Yes. And she was evaluating all their data from the air quality air monitoring studies that they did or didn't do. And she was taking her away from, my aunt was also her caregiver for the last 5 years. So the last week of her life, you know, she started to sleep more and more, and she was telling me, I'm still praying for you, you know, because she knew what she was busy working on while she was taking care of her.
So your grandmother believed all the way up to the end of her days, rest her soul again,
Thank you.
that the highway was going to be ultimately removed. She believed that the right
She
thing was going
believed
to
in
be done.
those homes for her grandbabies, yes, yes.
And she wanted them to inherit homes that were their full market value,
Yeah.
and without the highway
They're
being
beautiful
there.
homes, regardless of the highway. These homes are, I couldn't build it or buy another one in any other
They probably cost
part
$500,000.
of the city.
They probably cost
Upwards.
$500,000 to build.
Just even the materials of the craftsmanship that
Mm-hmm.
put them together. We don't even have those skills
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And if you can find someone with the ability, they're charging $200 plus an hour.
Exactly.
So to build a home like that, you really can't even, the quality of the lumber that they use, we don't even have that type of wood stock left in this country. So it's, you know, she had the foresight and she had the belief that this wrong would be righted in the future. And here we are in the future, and this is what we're up against, is that they're trying to give us a half-baked deal. And
Yes, they're trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and
Yep.
it's not right. The Band-Aid's made of concrete.
The other, you know, if we were to restore the parkway, the rest of that money could be used to help pay for people's medical expenses from the health implications that they're living with.
And also the damage to their homes
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
And also the damage
compared
to the
their
commercial corridors they could
Yeah.
have. And also we could, if we can just imagine, I mean, it's like the sky is the limit if they
Yeah.
would just do the right thing with that $1 billion budget.
And when you're forced an infrastructure and perpetuate infrastructure upon us that keeps us sick, you really keep us in our place. You know, when you're sick, when you're not healthy, you cannot fulfill and achieve the dreams that you may have for yourself. If you're not able to get out of bed, if you're dealing with COPD, you know, and all the other ailments, the heart disease, if your life expectancy is reduced, you might make it to retirement, but will you live on afterward? So, you know, we're really shorting people the full American dream by leaving the legacy of the Kensington 33 as it is.
Do you think, so well said, do you think the race of the predominant number of majority of residents on Humboldt Parkway, think that has anything to do with the fact that instead of a highway removal, we're being proposed a cap and stitch? Think race has anything to do with it?
I believe so. There's also been a reduction of home ownership on the east side as well. And when you have both those dynamics at play, and if the homes are still habitable, who's owning them? Oh, they're foreigners from the Middle East or Southeast Asia.
Right.
That's still Black and brown people.
That's
so,
true.
Even as we see that shift in the social socioeconomics, we're seeing a continued divestment because and with those two factors at play, we deserve better. We all deserve the same things.
Mm-hmm.
We all deserve to breathe clean air.
That's true.
To live long and prosper, and this infrastructure that they're continuing to shove down our throats, or to put the Band-Aid job that they're going to try and do, is just going to continue to create an environment for us to not thrive. And I absolutely believe it's because of the demographic of the neighborhood. We're still prioritizing suburbanites to get home as fast as possible, instead of making it a better place to live for the people directly impacted by the highway that they have to live around.
Exactly.
You know?
And if you can contain the expanse, how far someone can dream, you can control, really truly you can control, you can dominate them, and you can also subvert their fight or their inclination to struggle to achieve more, or to achieve a sky's the limit kind of a horizon for themselves. So it's a way to do social control.
Yeah, you limit their earning
through
potential.
denial. Mm-hmm. Through denial.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess I'm going to just say it in plain English, and just for everyone who's wondering, are we dancing around anything here? I don't think so. I'm going to ask you, Humboldt Parkway, we're a predominantly white neighborhood. Do you think the New York State Department of Transportation's proposed project would be a removal of the highway or a Band-Aid?
I think it would either be a true expansive tunneling from downtown beyond Sydney. I mean, they're not even, what is it, like 2/3 of the parkway they're proposing to cover? It's not even, we don't even get the whole thing taken care of. I definitely think that it would be a project that the people wanted. And even right now, it's funny to go to. I was at the march a few weeks ago, and I'm looking. I'm like, this is a Black neighborhood, but most people here that are fighting for this don't look like my husband, like my kids. And I'm thankful to have their support. But I'm also, it's frustrating. But I also do know people that are living with disease and they just don't have it, or they're taking care of their sick parents and they can't make it because they're living with the repercussions of being in that. And I heard some of that backlash. Well, why didn't the residents get up and do anything? Well, after you've been living in certain conditions for so long, you are worn out.
That is so true.
You don't have the same faculties to go out and fight. It's structural. It's, my grandma used to call it passive genocide. She was a very forward, slightly paranoid, but very forward thinking and critical thinking woman. Where they create circumstances that keep you in your place.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. One of the gentlemen that I interviewed before you, he said something to the effect of that he had not been following, even when he heard the announcement about the project, he hadn't followed the announcement very closely because he was still traumatized. He said, even hearing about the expressway re-traumatizes me I feel like I'm back to when they decided to put the expressway there and they didn't have community support then either. So he said, but I'm so grateful. He was talking to the Warriors organization and also to my consulting company. He said, I'm so grateful for persons such as yourself out here fighting, because you're fighting for something, you know, I feel that is what I feel is important. And I'm so glad that you're doing it. But I want to tell you that it's because of persons such as yourself and that gentleman being willing to be interviewed and for your voices to be amplified, so that persons who don't have their finger on the pulse of the issue and don't understand all the various advantages to it. I mean, you've got the New York State Department of Transportation there, but then you've got the community here, and you've got these groups, and you've got these persons who live on Humboldt Parkway neighborhood, in that neighborhood, and who live in nearby neighborhoods, and you've got groups that either live in the neighborhood or want what is best for the neighborhood. And like you say, it's not a black and white issue. It really truly is about a justice issue. It's a justice, environmental justice, racial justice, social justice, ecological justice. It's about how the Department of Transportation approached the community, and did they approach the community with their hand extended in an offer of partnership? Let's work together and come up with a solution regarding this intrusive, invasive, violating, sickening highway that we put here so many umpteen years ago, but we now have a budget to do something about. That's not what they did. What they did was they approached and they said, this is what we're going to do, and if you complain too much about it, we won't do anything at all. And on that note, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone who's listening. Please stay tuned to this issue. Pay close attention to what side of the debate people are on, and don't be fooled. The groups that are fighting in this struggle are not fighting each other. I know sometimes it's easy to get confused by what you see on the news or what you read in the newspaper. We're not fighting each other, because believe it or not, we want the same thing. The groups want what is best for Humboldt Parkway neighborhood and nearby and adjacent neighborhood residents, and they want what is best for East Buffalo community, and that includes our commercial corridors, which is a whole nother conversation, and we're going to have that conversation at some point. But for now, I want to thank you for your time. And is there anything that you, if you could, and you can, because we've got the camera on you right now, what would you say to New York State Department of Transportation about the Kensington Expressway and their project?
Please stop. Hit the pause button, step back, reevaluate, go back to the drawing board, because we know we can do better. The trend nationwide is to repair these wrongs of the past, and this project is just perpetuating the wrong. So please pause, take a step back, reconnect with us, because we're screaming, we're shouting, we're marching, and you keep turning your back on us. And it's we are still taxpaying Americans. The Department of Transportation is something that our tax dollars fund. So we need to reevaluate, go back to the drawing board, and recreate this project with the budget and give us beyond the hand that we are currently being dealt. We need something bigger, that's something better, much more far encompassing, and something that's going to last generations, that won't have to be fixed in another 30, 50 years.
And if you're really trying to accomplish your goal of reconnecting communities and strengthening neighborhoods, you cannot do it without us.
Yeah.
You need us.
Yep.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God.